week, and it was, of course, Thomas Tuchel being relieved of his duties as Chelsea boss following a 1-0 loss to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League. Was that who Chelsea versed? Yes, Dinamo Zagreb. A 1-0 loss to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League. The day after, Thomas Tuchel was relieved of his duties as Chelsea boss. Now, where do we start? Now, Chelsea have come out and said, or at least reports have come to light in which Chelsea had already had this decision made before the Champions League result. So take of that what you will. Take that with a pinch of salt if you want to believe it, or if you don't, that's up to you. I necessarily think that if Thomas Tuchel had just beaten Zagreb, I don't think he would have been sacked. I think it would have been a stern warning in that meeting that was scheduled before that game, or like scheduled before to be taken place after. I think would have been a stern warning and a stern talking to that, right, you need to get your shit together. But Chelsea's in a really weird spot because they've played 6 games in the Premier League, and are currently sitting in 6th place. So sitting in 6th place, won 3, lost 1, or drawn 1, lost 2. Granted, a goal difference of -1 isn't great, but when you look at some of the losses, you have the 1-0 win over Everton, which was kind of not great, but it's good to just get a result. 2-2 draw against Tottenham, in which Chelsea dominated the game, and Chelsea deserved to win that game. Chelsea were by far the better team, by far had the lion's share of chances, and really, really got robbed in that game. In all honesty, you have the 3-0 loss to Leeds, which came from a Mendy mistake and then a red card, and then a set piece. So Chelsea didn't really get outplayed in that game to an extent. It was a set piece, it was an own goal, not own goal, but it was like a Mendy mistake, which basically led to an open goal, set piece. So one of those results, a 2-1 win over Leicester, in which it was pretty comfortable. I know Leicester did dominate that game, but Chelsea kind of were in control for most of it in terms of they were able to dictate the game. They weren't allowing Leicester to have big chances. 2-1 loss to Southampton's obviously not good enough. And then the 2-1 win over West Ham, which really should have been a draw. Cost West Ham the VAR in that game, which you all know about. But is it a good start to the season for Chelsea? Absolutely not. I don't think you can even argue that. But is it sackable? Probably not. And there's been conflicting reports about why he was sacked. It came to a shock to me. Came out of nowhere. Didn't see any reports about it. Didn't see anything. I just kind of refreshed Twitter on a Wednesday night and just saw it, which immediately immediately made me think, all right, something's been going on behind the scenes, and we've come to light that Bowley and Tuchel didn't really have a big agreement on a couple of key things. One of them was Cristiano Ronaldo. Todd Bowley's insistence on signing him. Tuchel was like, we don't need him. I back Tuchel in that scenario. I don't think signing Ronaldo would have been the best decision Chelsea made. And also the signing of young players as well, obviously with Chukwuemeka and these other young signings that Chelsea have brought in this summer. That was really a Todd Bowley initiative, not really a Thomas Tuchel initiative. Tuchel was very insistent on bringing the youth that the club already had, and Bowley was like, no, let's just pluck the best young players in the world. Not in the world, but like some of the best young players, especially in the country. Players like Chukwuemeka and etc. just are very talented players. So I guess it is that. I guess it is kind of one of those things where you have a massive disagreement. Not even a massive disagreement, because this isn't even like life or death. Like, let's be honest. This isn't life or death. This is just a little bit of a miscommunication, a little bit of a misunderstanding. Tuchel obviously thinks he knows more about football than Todd Bowley, which he does. Todd Bowley is more of your businessman, more of your finances, to give Tuchel the reins. I think that's probably what would work best, especially now with no Petr Cech as being that kind of link person in a sense to the coach and then the board, because he's no longer in charge. It does really create maybe not toxic, but it does create a little bit of a different atmosphere, especially for Tuchel, who came into a system under Roman where he was very communicative. Fuck me. He was very, how do I describe this? It was very open in a sense. both parties were kind of flexible with what each other wanted. To Bowley, who's obviously very stringent on his way in a sense and doesn't really know a lot, with all due respect, about football and about the way football clubs operate in a sense. He's a fantastic businessman, maybe not a good football person, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yes, Tuchel gone. Now, what does this mean? Or is there any more background I think we have to speak about? Well, it is one of those things where obviously it wasn't based off on-field performances, because while a lot of Chelsea supporters were angry and called for maybe not change, but called for at least some called for a little bit of difference in what they want, in what was happening, because it was really bland. It was very similar, and it wasn't really the game plan hadn't improved from last year. It hadn't really changed from last year. Now you'd back a senior coach like Tuchel, you'd back a coach like Tuchel who has taken Chelsea to a Champions League, who guided them to top four under extreme duress last season, and guided them to 2 cup finals in which they lost on penalties in both times. You would back him in thinking, all right, he's probably has the minerals to get the job done in terms of turning things around and in terms of being able to alter what is currently happening and be able to fix it. You'd back him, but I guess Bowley didn't, and I guess Bowley was more impatient, or was more, all right, let's just get this changed. Because let's not remember, Tuchel isn't a Todd Bowley man. He didn't hire him. He didn't. Obviously, we've come to find philosophies don't align, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. I think as a Chelsea supporter, I was angry because this club has gone through enough turmoil over the past 12 months. So we didn't need any more. But I guess the only way is the Chelsea way, and the Chelsea way is this, right? This is the only thing that Chelsea are good for in a sense, and the only thing that they can do. So, yeah, it is one of those things. It is one of those things where you kind of need to accept it, and you need to try and at least understand where Todd Bowley, in this case, is coming from, because I feel like a lot of fans disagree. A lot of fans have disagreed, and a lot of fans have spoken out about this and have spoken out about the treatment that Tuchel got. Remember, his last game wasn't even at home, right? So, and he wasn't even given a proper send off. He took training the morning of him getting sacked. I think quotes have come out and said that he was shocked and devastated by the decision, as you would be, of course. He didn't see it coming. So you kind of have to accept these things. But you can be angry. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, and let's take Twitter with a pinch of salt, because cesspool at times. But I see a lot of people saying frustrated at Tuchel. No, frustrated at Tuchel for not doing enough to keep his job, which is weird. And also seeing people angry at Graham Potter, which we'll touch on a little bit later, of course. But yeah, just bizarre. You can be angry, you can be upset. But I think it's where you have to acknowledge what's happened, and you have to kind of maybe not move on, but you have to at least try and understand what's happened. It sucks. It does, because he's written himself in Chelsea folklore for lifting a European Cup, something that you can never take for granted. Something that Roberto Di Matteo and Didier Drogba are in Chelsea folklore for now, and Kai Havertz is in Chelsea folklore, and by proxy, Thomas Tuchel is in Chelsea folklore because of that triumph, and he will forever be one of Chelsea's best ever managers purely because of that. You can't underestimate the feat of winning the European Cup for a club like Chelsea, who really hasn't been historically massively successful. Obviously, pre-Abramovich, it was kind of your nice solid upper table club. Floating between 7th and 3rd, and winning some FA Cups, some Cup Winners' Cups, League Cups, etc. Floating in and around. Let's not get this twisted, right? Chelsea, yeah, they're not Manchester United in terms of history, but they're also not Manchester City. Let's be honest. Chelsea do have a pretty good history, especially in the late 90s and especially in the mid to late 90s, and it was always that brass ring that Chelsea could never really grab, and that's why when Frank Lampard rounds Jaskalainen at the Reebok, when Joe Cole scores a hat trick, or when Chelsea beat United 3-0 at Stamford Bridge, these moments do just live in your head, and are massive moments in the club, especially for fans. And that's similar when Torres rounds Valdez at the Camp Nou, when Drogba gets on the end of a Juan Mata cross to equalise at the Allianz and then score the penalty when Kai Havertz rounds Edison. These moments put people into folklore for a club, especially like Chelsea. So Tuchel is now by proxy the man who led Chelsea to a European Cup in a thrilling campaign. Like they beat, let's not forget the who Chelsea had to beat. They had to beat Atletico Madrid in the first round. And they had to beat Porto, a very handy Porto side, and obviously Real Madrid, who we've come to find the year after winning the Champions League. And then Manchester City in the final, who was probably one of the best Man City sides I've seen in terms of just the way that they played football and the way that they were just so fluent in what they were doing. It's probably the pound for pound the best City side I've seen. Won the league at a canter, and let's be honest, probably should have won the Champions League that year. If it wasn't for some Eduardo Mendy brilliance and if it wasn't for some Antonio Rudiger brilliance and N'Golo Kante playing a stretch of 3 games, if you're taking both the legs of the semi-final and the final, some of the best football I've ever seen from a player. Like N'Golo Kante won Chelsea that Champions League title, those semi-finals, those 2 semi-finals and that final, he was unbelievable. And that goes back to Thomas Tuchel. That goes back to giving him the credit and giving him that title that he deserves as a Chelsea legend, because he got the best out of these players and was able to really drive this standard. We saw the best N'Golo Kante we've ever seen. We saw the best Antonio Rudiger we've ever seen. We saw the best Reece James we've ever seen, and probably I think we'll ever see. In terms of output, I think he'll get better, but in terms of output, he'll just be. I think that's unreal what Reece James was doing under Tuchel. Mount, Havertz, these players were just unbelievable under him, and I think that has to fall back down on his shoulders in a sense, and he really needs to be acknowledged as tactically one of the better Chelsea managers that Chelsea have ever had. But yeah, we'll live in Chelsea folklore forever, and will be a manager that we would have cherished as Chelsea supporters, and even as football people. He was a good character in the league. He provided that enthusiasm. Yeah, the football wasn't great at times. It was kind of very, very systematic, very industrious way of playing football. But yeah, it was a very good tenure for Thomas Tuchel. Got sacked too soon in my opinion, but it is what it is, and that's the cycle of football. Managers get sacked, managers get brought in, they get sacked, they get brought in, and the man to replace Thomas Tuchel is a man that we've all been calling for, and football hipsters and the like have been calling